The Washington Commanders look poised to take the NFC East by storm this year, eyeing their first division title since 2020 and just maybe their first Super Bowl since 1991. Jayden Daniels has stolen all of the headlines this year, but there's so much more to this comeback story. After years as one of the NFL's most troubled franchises, marred by the shadow of one of the league's most scandalous owners, Washington is turning a new page. Through savvy recruitment, smart free agent pickups, and a renewed connection to their fan base, the Commanders are building something special. And after days of research, I found the real reasons behind their remarkable turnaround. And this is exactly why the Washington Commanders deserve every bit of success coming their way. For a good example of how dysfunctional the Washington franchise has been, look no further than their definition of success on the gridiron, which has featured just one playoff appearance in the last 8 seasons. In that moderately successful 2020 campaign, they won the division with a 7-9 record, setting them up for a wildcard game against Tom Brady's Bucs, where they were taken care of despite a strong performance from their 4th starting quarterback of the year, Taylor Heinicke. And even with a defensive rookie of the season from Chase Young, the franchise had a full year of turmoil. Owner Dan Snyder finally backed down amid controversy around the team's name, agreeing to perhaps one of the blandest and most bizarre names for an NFL franchise, the Washington Football Team. And don't worry, we're going to talk more on the ownership in just a minute. Sticking to their problems on the field though, another 7-win effort in 2021 meant no postseason, marked by an ACL tear for Chase Young, which had occurred just after his breakout season, in an eerily familiar manner for Washington fans who had seen RG3 suffer a similar fate in 2013. Yet another rebrand to the start of the 2022 season yielded a slightly better return, with an 8-8 and 1-tie record seeing the newly named Commanders finish last in the NFC East. Despite another demoralizing season in DC full of empty home games and even emptier promises of success, there was one silver lining and a glimmer of hope that change finally was on the way.
The team hasn't said if the Snyders are considering selling the whole team or a minority stake or given any timeline for making a decision. Big question now is who might be on the other side of a multi-billion-dollar deal like that?
Dan Snyder, who had owned the franchise since 1999 and overseen the least successful period in the team's history, began looking into the possibility of selling his stake in November of 2022. And now look, this news was met with jubilation in the nation's capital. Fans actually felt that they had a shot of now building a winning football team in DC.
Snyder selling the team, and you're doing your...
See you, Dan.
Happy Dan.
Happy.
To have Dan Snyder out would be great.
He sells the team.
He's yeah, sell him.
Do the happy Dan.
Do the our house. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dan Snyder's a really atrocious human being. Very happy that he'll be out of our lives. Hopefully it puts the Commanders on a new path.
You guys have any reaction to Dan Snyder selling the Washington Commanders?
He's a terrible person. Good.
You see, Jack Kent Cooke, the legendary owner of the Washington Redskins, who led the franchise to 3 Super Bowls, passed away in 1997 and had written into his will that the team would be sold upon his death. In 1999, the franchise was sold to a businessman named Daniel Snyder, who made his money in the advertising industry and grew up in the DC area as a lifelong fan, claiming that his purchase was a dream come true. And despite the early optimism of the team being taken over by the new league's newest owner, Snyder's ambition for the franchise rapidly decreased into just ambitious spending and just not being able to control how bad he was of a person trying to run this franchise. Just irresponsible spending, flagrant disregard for the salary cap, and just breaking many other league regulations. This included signing an aging Deion Sanders to a 7-year mega deal and a 37-year-old Bruce Smith in 2000. Sanders retired after only 1 season, and Smith never managed a playoff appearance across his 3 years in Washington. They did log a playoff win against the Bucs in 2006, but they haven't tasted postseason success in those 18 years since. The playoff drought, combined with Snyder suing fans who defaulted or backed out of their season tickets during the Great Recession, then banning any signs critical of his ownership, further strained his relationship with the fan base. As a direct consequence, the Washington faithful just stopped even coming to the games. Snyder's reckless actions were beginning to catch up with him. He had to give the go-ahead for the removal of 10,000 seats from the stadium while still paying off the original original debt from its construction in the 1990s. He was also slapped with an $18 million penalty in 2012 for overspending on player contracts and refused to budge on changing the controversial name and mascot of his franchise, even though he was too much of a fan, which isn't a great excuse. By 2020, corporate sponsors threatened to cut ties if the name wasn't changed, finally forcing Snyder to agree to the placeholder Washington football team. Controversy around the franchise owner reached terrifying depths though when sways of former employees accused members of the organization, including Snyder himself, of sexual harassment. Pair that with the team withholding around $11 million in revenue that was meant to be shared with the league, not even a rebrand to the Washington Commanders was going to save Snyder and company. And according to RG3, the name selection was a little more than spiteful flailing. And I mean, it got so bad that even Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, had even this to say about Daniel Snyder.
To me, it's something that I think serious consideration has to be given to the removal, and we have complete authority to do that.
And now with other owners beginning to turn against him, Snyder reportedly collected dirt on all of them for blackmail, not exactly integrating himself with anyone. I mean, he couldn't even win over his own players with comfortably the worst 2023 report card from the NFLPA, which assessed the state of team facilities, treatments of families, food and nutrition, and more as one of the worst in the league.
Dan and Tanya Snyder have hired Bank of America, which is where they do their banking, by the way, to look into and explore the idea that they would sell the Commanders franchise.
Commanders are about to have a new owner. Our Jonathan Jones reporting that current owner Daniel Snyder has reached an agreement in principle to sell the team to a group led by 76ers and New Jersey Devils owner Josh Harris.
This is the greatest day, aside from the 91 greatest NFL team ever. The city gets its team back.
Dan Snyder finally sold the franchise for $6.5 billion in the 2023 offseason, the largest sum ever paid for a sports team, which was gleefully and unanimously approved by all NFL owners. And I think honestly, just the cherry on top for everybody, despite yes, he sold it for $6.5 billion, was that when he did sell it, because of all the drama that was mentioned previously, he was fined $60 million because of all of that. And though the new ownership did arrive a little bit late in 2023 to really make any subsequential just changes to the team, everyone just finally got that breath of fresh air now that Snyder was finally out of the building. With the track record of turning around failing franchises, the arrival of Josh Harris back home to DC was welcomed with open arms. Given his success with the Sixers and the New Jersey Devils, along with the high-profile experience of other investors such as Magic Johnson, Washington finally had owners with some real sports management under their belt. In 2023, the Commanders went 4-13 in Ron Rivera's fourth and final season at the helm, which significantly gave the new ownership the second overall pick in the upcoming draft. To kick off the new era, Washington hired 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters to take control as general manager in January of 2024. Peters was coming off of a 6-year stint in San Francisco, where he was part of one of the best run franchises in the NFL, helping make the 49ers a perennial contender in the NFC. Touted as the next big GM across the league, Peters was credited with scouting the likes of Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and Fred Warner, all late-round picks who proved crucial to San Francisco's success in recent years. Most importantly, though, he came from a successful winning culture, which was something completely foreign at Commanders headquarters until now. Adam Peters brought in Dan Quinn on as the new head coach, widely considered one of the finest defensive minds in football, leading the Legion of Boom to a ring as defensive coordinator of the Seahawks from 2013 to 2014. As a head coach, he also led Atlanta on a remarkable run to the Super Bowl in 2016, but out of respect for Falcons fans, that's all I'm going to say about that game in the Super Bowl. Quinn's credited as a coach that leads with positivity and optimism, both qualities that will be needed to combat the doom and gloom that has defined this franchise for the better part of 2 decades. He is the ultimate people person who has a palpable effect on the locker room culture the moment he arrived. Quinn brought an entirely new coaching staff, with Cliff Kingsbury joining as offensive coordinator and Joe Witt Jr. as defensive coordinator. They held on to important pieces such as Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson Jr., who had been big sources of offensive output for the Commanders in recent seasons. And I mean, they even cleaned house on the roster, releasing 5 of their 7 selections from the 2023 draft class. Change in the offseason was led by a group of 30 new players intended to mold a a completely new culture in DC with a mix of youth and veterans who fit specific character profiles that Peters and company were drawn to, namely Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Marcus Mariota, and Bobby Wagner. Of course, the most significant roster addition that came to this team was via the 2024 NFL Draft.
Jaden, Adam, the Commanders, how you doing, man? I've just been so impressed with what you've done to get yourself to where you're at right now, man. And there's so many more great things to come. But you put in all the work in the early mornings, the late nights. I just couldn't be more impressed, and I couldn't be more proud to pick you to represent our franchise. So congratulations, man.
Congrats, man. How awesome is this? I've known for a long time about the ball player, but over the last 2 months, I learned about the dude, the dedication. I think the Florida game spoke to your resilience. That's why you're coming here, man. You're a dog competitor. We're going to kick a lot of things together.
Congrats, man. Welcome to you and your family to DMV. I know we're going to make it happen together. So appreciative of we're going to be doing it. And what a night, and you've earned it, and just celebrate. Can't wait to see you
With the
tomorrow.
second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, Washington Commanders select Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU.
The 2023 Heisman winner had an unreal season with LSU, but wasn't always considered the automatic second best quarterback prospect in his class. His mobility and deep ball jumped out on tape, and the way he dominated the SEC last season was no small feat. But there were some understandable concerns about his slim frame, especially given the amount of running he'd have to do once he got into the league. I mean, the Commanders were completely blown away by Jaden in their draft evaluation process, amazed at his ability to read the game and digest film when they sat down with him. I mean, their new GM Adam Peters even had this to say about Daniels the night after the draft.
Why Jaden? Why not Jaden? Jaden, he's to us, he was special in every way. On the field, off the field. I talked to him a couple times, and I told him kind of what I told you guys the other day. Didn't really watch a lot of the quarterbacks hard during the season, being with the 49ers, and then turned on Jaden for the first time here, and I couldn't believe it. I honestly couldn't believe how good he was. And saw him on TV, saw him on highlights and everything, but when you really study him as a quarterback, just as a quarterback, he's really, really good.
Toward the end of training camp, Daniels was named the starting quarterback for week 1. He put up respectable showings against the Bucs and the Giants in the first 2 weeks of the season, but he had his biggest test ahead of him heading into Cincinnati for a primetime week 3 matchup. Daniels threw for 254 yards, completed 91% of his passes, and was responsible for 3 touchdowns in a 38-33 win, drawing the nation's eyes to the football team in its capital, which for the first time in nearly a generation was giving the league something positive to talk about. He then followed this up with 2 more wins, throwing for over 230 yards against both the Cardinals and the Browns. Washington was understandably handed their second loss by the Ravens, but bounced back the following week against Carolina without Daniels, who went down injured in the first half. Jaden did recover, as we all know, for his week 8 showdown against the number 1 overall pick taken ahead of him in Caleb Williams, and I mean, it was just an absolute show that they put on. I think it's safe to say that Daniels did win the duel, not just for his superior performance throughout the game, but rather by virtue of the game-winning drive he led. Washington went 76 yards in only 4 plays with 25 seconds left on the clock, down by 3, and then did this.
Throughout the rest of the game, it's hurting more and more. Comes down to one last play, and it's going to be getting longer by the second. You're all the way back at the 30-yard line. Now you can step into it. Here comes the Hail Mary with the game on the line, and the ball is caught! Caught! It's a miracle! It's Noah Brown! Oh my goodness! This town is going crazy! It's a madhouse in Landover, Maryland! He did it!
I mean, for these epic plays that he has been doing, and I mean, I'm sure there's more to come, Jaden Daniels has by far and away looked like the favorite and surefire pick to win Offensive Rookie this year. And I think just having the great rapport with just Cliff Kingsbury and that relationship that they've been able to build this entire season is really starting to show, and just allowing them to just have that pursuit of glory and maybe make it into the playoffs, and who knows once they're in the playoffs. And I mean, as a result of this synergy, Daniels hasn't missed a step with the second highest pass completion percentage in the league playing with poise and execution of a veteran quarterback. His mobility has also proved a great asset, as he is second only to Lamar Jackson in rushing yards among quarterbacks in 2024. If we see Daniels keep up on this pace, don't be shocked if he's getting MVP shout by the end of this season, especially if the Commanders can clinch the division. And now look, I mean, it's not just this rookie quarterback that's playing far and above, just way higher than all expectations, including myself, that, as you all have called me out on, he's just playing on a different level right now. But not only that, it's the entire team that is playing just far and above the expectations that everybody had about them coming into the 2024 season. Terry McLaurin is the only elite receiving weapon at his disposal and has been the biggest beneficiary of Daniels' elite quarterback play, looking to keep up his franchise record streak of 4 straight seasons with 1,000 receiving yards. Brian Robinson Jr. has already recorded a career best rushing touchdown tally and is on track to set another career best in rushing yards. And now, yes, earlier in the season, the Commanders defense did look a little just shaky at the beginning of the 2024 year, and it's definitely improving, especially after an easier stretch of the games just between weeks 4 and 7. According to Sportsnaut, their opponents during that stretch only averaged 154 passing yards per game with an 87 quarterback rating, 15 sacks taken, and a 3-3 touchdown to interception line. Keeping Caleb quiet after all that he seemed to be trending upward in week 8 is a good look, and there's no doubt that with such a young team and the picks spent on defense in the 2024 draft, including the cornerback that they did bring in and the defensive tackle in Jaziron Newton, this unit can certainly mature into a formidable force. However, it will take some catching up to match the dominance Washington has on the offensive side of the ball. But I mean, honestly, if their defense proves that they're up to scratch by the postseason, they might have a chance of winning their first playoff game since January of 2006. And if so, then who's to say that they don't have a crack at their first Lombardi since the 90s? And I mean, if that actually happens, Josh Harris is going to have to put those 10,000 seats back in the Northwest Stadium. And I can confidently say that if there is one fan base in the NFL that deserves some success after everything they've been through, it would be Washington's. And if you want to see how Jared Goff fully resurrected his career from being pushed out by Sean McVay with the Rams to now becoming Super Bowl contenders for the Detroit Lions, click this video right here.